Hey everyone! Tonight we're drifting back through the quiet stone corridors of a medieval castle. So, wherever you are, let the lights grow a little softer. Put your phone somewhere slightly out of reach, if you can bear such a thing, and settle in. Tonight there will be no urgent battles to win, no kingdom to save, and no ambitious prince demanding your immediate attention. Instead, we are going to spend some time inside a medieval castle. And we are going to ask a surprisingly ordinary question. What did people actually do all day? Because when we imagine a medieval castle, we tend to picture knights charging through gates, kings sitting dramatically on thrones, queens wearing enormous dresses, servants rushing around with silver trays, and perhaps someone being accused of treason before breakfast. But most days were not like that. Most days were much quieter. A castle was a workplace, a home, a warehouse, a military post, a farmyard, a kitchen, a church, a courthouse, and occasionally a place where someone very important became annoyed because his dinner was slightly cold. The people inside had schedules. They had chores. They had meals. They had repairs to make. They had animals to feed. They had clothes to mend. They had fires that refused to behave. And they had an enormous number of things made from wood, because medieval Europe had not yet invented the modern concept of simply going to a hardware store and buying a replacement. If a wooden bucket broke, someone had to fix it. If a door hinge failed, someone had to repair it. If the roof leaked, someone had to climb up there and discover exactly how unpleasant medieval roofing could be. And if the lord of the castle wanted something done immediately, well, naturally, it became everyone's problem. So let us begin our slow walk through an ordinary medieval day. Imagine that it is early morning. The castle is still mostly dark. Outside, the first pale light is appearing over the surrounding fields. Perhaps it is winter, and the grass is silver with frost. Perhaps it is summer, and mist is resting low over the valley. The walls of the castle are cold. Very cold. Stone has a remarkable ability to remember winter. Even after a fire has been burning for hours, the walls can remain chilly to the touch. And unlike us, medieval people did not have central heating. They had fireplaces. Several fireplaces, in larger castles. But a fireplace does not distribute warmth evenly. It gives you a small island of comfort. Move a few feet away, and suddenly you remember that you live in the Middle Ages. The first people awake are not necessarily the nobles. They are often the servants. Someone has to get the fire going. Someone has to prepare breakfast. Someone has to fetch water. Someone has to check the animals. Someone has to clean yesterday's cooking equipment. And someone, somewhere, has probably already stepped into something unpleasant. This is not an elegant beginning to the day. But medieval life rarely was. A castle kitchen, especially, could become active very early. The kitchen was usually separated from the main residential rooms when possible, partly because of the danger of fire. And that danger was very real. Most things were flammable. Wooden beams. Wooden furniture. Rushes. Cloth. Straw. Oil. Cooking fuel. A large open fire surrounded by these things was essentially a medieval argument waiting to happen. So cooks learned to be careful. Or at least careful enough to keep the castle standing. They worked with iron pots, wooden spoons, knives, spits, bowls, baskets, and heavy stone surfaces. There were no electric ovens, no refrigerators, no convenient little button that could summon a warm meal in 30 seconds. Food had to be stored, preserved, prepared, and cooked. The pantry mattered enormously. So did the cellar. A wealthy household might have stores of grain, salted meat, dried fish, beans, peas, onions, cheese, butter, eggs, wine, ale, and other provisions depending on the region and season. Some foods were seasonal. Others could be preserved. Salt was particularly valuable because it helped preserve meat and fish. Smoking was another method. Drying was another. Fermentation was another. And then there was the ancient medieval preservation technique known as hoping the food was still fine. Although people did understand spoilage rather better than that sounds. Breakfast itself depended on the household. For ordinary workers, meals could be simple. Bread was extremely important. So were pottage-like dishes made from grains, vegetables, legumes, and whatever else happened to be available. The wealthy could eat more varied food. But even the richest lord in Europe was still living in a world where food production depended on weather, harvests, livestock, transportation, and an enormous amount of human labor. The castle's dining hall therefore did not magically produce food. The food came from somewhere. And quite a few people had spent their morning making sure it arrived. While the cooks are working, another part of the castle is beginning to wake. The stable yard. Horses were extremely important. For warfare, travel, hunting, transportation, status, and simply getting from one place to another without walking through mud. Horses also produced work. And, unfortunately for the stable workers, horses produced other things too. A stable boy might spend part of the morning removing manure, changing bedding, carrying feed, grooming horses, checking hooves, and preparing animals for riding. This was not glamorous. Yet stable work could be an important position. A skilled horseman understood animals, equipment, and the needs of the household. Horses were expensive. A good horse could represent a considerable investment. So you did not simply leave it standing in a corner and hope for the best. Someone had to care for it. Someone had to notice if it was lame. Someone had to clean its tack. Someone had to make sure it had enough food. And someone had to deal with the fact that horses, like medieval kings, occasionally had strong opinions about where they intended to go. By now, the castle would be properly awake. Guards would be changing shifts. Doors would be opened. Servants would be moving through corridors. The sound of footsteps would echo against stone. The lord of the castle might still be asleep. This is one of the interesting things about medieval hierarchy. The people with the most authority did not necessarily begin the day with the most work. A nobleman might rise later. He might have servants help him dress. His clothing itself could be complicated. Linen beneath wool. A tunic. A belt. Perhaps a cloak. Perhaps jewelry or other markers of status. For a wealthy woman, dressing could take even longer. Clothing was not merely something you put on. It represented wealth, position, marital status, and social identity. And naturally, someone else usually had to help. The Lord's chamber therefore becomes its own little workplace. Servants might bring water for washing. They might prepare clothing. They might tend the fire. They might carry messages. The noble household did not function because one magnificent person was extremely competent. It functioned because dozens of less magnificent people were doing their jobs. This is perhaps the greatest secret of castle life. The castle looked like the home of one powerful family. In reality, it was a small community of workers. The Lord might own the castle, but he could not personally cook every meal, groom every horse, repair every roof tile, clean every room, keep every account, prepare every document, guard every entrance, and somehow still have time to go hunting. So the household was divided into roles. There were cooks, grooms, servants, guards, craftsmen, clerks, chaplains, stewards, messengers, laundry workers, kitchen workers, and people whose names have mostly disappeared from history because medieval documents tended to be much more interested in the people who owned things than the people who maintained them. We know the names of kings. We know the names of famous knights. We sometimes know the names of queens. But the person who swept the hall yesterday morning? Probably not. And yet that person may have been more essential to the castle's daily operation than the knight whose name appears in 3 Chronicles. The great medieval castle was therefore a strange combination of grandeur and routine. At the top, there was ceremony. At the bottom, there was sweeping. Somewhere between the two, there were accounts. And there were many accounts. A large household needed records. Grain had to be measured. Wine had to be counted. Cattle had to be tracked. Payments had to be recorded. Rent had to be collected. Supplies had to be ordered. The steward or household administrators had to know what was coming in and what was going out. Because castles consumed an impressive amount of food. A noble household could not simply wake up one morning and discover that nobody had remembered to buy grain. Well, they could. But it would be a rather poor demonstration of medieval management. So records mattered. Clerks worked with parchment, ink, quills, and careful handwriting. They copied documents. They recorded transactions. They prepared letters. They dealt with legal matters. They helped maintain the administrative machinery behind the Lord's authority. And this was often much less exciting than sword fighting. Which was probably a good thing. A castle where everyone was constantly fighting would have had a remarkably short future. Instead, most people were working. Quietly. Repeatedly. The same tasks returning every day. Sweep. Carry. Cook. Feed. Wash. Write. Repair. Guard. Repeat. And there was always something to repair. This is where we should slowly move outside. The castle was not isolated from the surrounding landscape. It depended on it. Fields surrounded many castles. Villages supplied labor, food, rents, and services. Gardens could provide herbs, vegetables, and fruit. Livestock grazed nearby. Woodlands supplied timber and fuel. Streams supplied water. Roads connected the estate to other settlements. So a castle was not really a self-contained stone island. It was the center of a much larger economic world. Farm workers might be plowing fields beyond the walls. Others might be tending sheep. Some might be harvesting grain. Others might be repairing fences. And depending on the season, the entire rhythm of life could change. Summer meant long days of work. Winter meant shorter daylight and different priorities. Harvest season was especially demanding. Because when the grain was ready, it needed to be collected. And it needed to be collected before weather ruined it. Medieval people watched the sky with considerable interest. Rain could be useful. Too much rain could be disastrous. Drought could be disastrous. Cold could be disastrous. A late frost could damage crops. A poor harvest could affect everyone, from peasants to kings. The castle walls could protect you from raiders. They could not protect you from a failed harvest. And so, on a normal morning, while the noble lord might be discussing politics inside his chamber, hundreds of invisible decisions were already happening outside. Someone deciding when to plow. Someone deciding where animals should graze. Someone checking stored grain. Someone repairing a cart. Someone sharpening a tool. Someone carrying a basket. Someone simply trying to finish today's work before the rain arrives. The medieval world was full of movement. But it was repetitive movement. And that is perhaps why the ordinary day inside a castle is more interesting than it first appears. There were no televisions. No social media. No electric lights. No engines. No constant stream of notifications. There was simply the day. Morning. Work. Food. Prayer. Conversation. Work again. Then darkness. And tomorrow, more or less, the same thing. Of course, the castle's inhabitants did occasionally have excitement. A messenger could arrive. A lord could receive an unexpected visitor. A shipment might fail to appear. A horse might become ill. A dispute could break out. A fire might start. A nobleman might decide that today was the perfect day to go hunting. Because apparently the rabbits had been getting too comfortable. But even these events were interruptions to a routine. The great irony of castle life is that the stone walls make it look permanent and dramatic. Inside those walls, most people were simply trying to get through Tuesday. Or whatever medieval equivalent of Tuesday they were having. And as evening approaches, the pace begins to slow. The kitchen fire continues to glow. The horses settle in the stable. The guards take their positions. The servants clean what needs cleaning. The nobles eat. Candles flicker against stone. Somebody tells a story. Someone complains about the weather. Someone worries about tomorrow. And somewhere in the darkness, a tired servant finally lies down. There is no grand ending to the day. There does not need to be. The castle simply becomes quiet. For a few hours. Until tomorrow morning, when someone has to light the fire again. Because medieval life, like most life, was mostly made of ordinary things. And perhaps that is where we should leave our first evening. Not with a battle. Not with a royal execution. Not with a king dramatically staring into the distance. Just with the soft sound of footsteps fading down a stone corridor. The last embers glowing in the kitchen. The horses shifting quietly in the stable. And the castle settling into the cold night. Tomorrow, the work will begin again. But for now, everyone can sleep. And so can we. Morning returns to the castle. Not dramatically. There is no trumpet announcing the sunrise. No herald climbs the highest tower and declares that another day has begun. The sun simply appears. A thin line of pale light slips over the hills, touches the outer wall, and eventually reaches the windows of the great hall. And somewhere below, someone is already awake. Because the castle does not really sleep. It only becomes quieter. There are always guards. There may be watchmen walking along the walls, wrapped in wool against the cold, looking out across the surrounding countryside. Their work could be painfully boring. And that was rather the point. A good guard might spend hours seeing absolutely nothing. No enemy army. No suspicious rider. No dramatic messenger. Just fields. Trees. Roads. Birds. Perhaps a farmer leading an ox. Perhaps a fox disappearing into the hedges. The guard watches anyway. Because if you are being paid to notice something unusual, you cannot spend the entire morning deciding that everything unusual is probably nothing. Although people presumably did. There is something strangely modern about this. A medieval watchman staring into the distance for hours, hoping nothing happens. We can understand him. Nothing happening is usually a good sign. Inside the castle, the household is already moving. The first task is often fire. Fire is the invisible center of medieval domestic life. It cooks. It warms. It provides light. It can also destroy the building. So someone has to manage it. Ashes must be removed. Fresh wood must be added. Embers must be kept alive. Fireplaces must be watched. A careless spark could become a catastrophe. And because castles often contained large quantities of wood, cloth, straw, and other flammable material, fire was taken seriously. There might be designated people responsible for fires and lighting. Candles were valuable. Tallow candles were relatively common, while beeswax candles were more expensive and associated with wealth and religious use. So darkness was not simply defeated by turning on a switch. You had to make light. And that meant fuel. Every little flame had a cost. A candle burning in a corridor represented material that someone had produced, transported, shaped, and eventually lit. Which makes modern electricity feel almost suspiciously convenient. A servant carrying a candle through the castle therefore has a tiny responsibility. Keep it upright. Do not burn the curtain. Do not set your sleeve on fire. Do not drop it into the straw. And, ideally, arrive at the other end with the candle still burning. These small tasks were repeated endlessly. And repetition was the hidden machinery of castle life. Consider laundry. It is easy to forget just how much work clothing created. There were no washing machines. There was no detergent poured neatly into a drawer. There was no heated water appearing from a pipe. Water had to be collected. Clothing had to be transported. Soap, where available, had to be used carefully. Some fabrics required different treatment. Heavy wool garments could not simply be tossed into a wooden tub and forgotten. Linen undergarments were particularly important because they could be washed more frequently than heavier outer garments. So laundry workers had a great deal to do. They carried bundles. They heated water. They scrubbed. They rinsed. They wrung. They dried. And then they folded or stored everything again. It was tiring work. And yet clean linen was one of the simple comforts of a wealthy household. The nobleman might never think about how much labor was required to keep his clothing fresh. That was rather the privilege of being a nobleman. Someone else worried about it. The same was true of food. The Lord might sit down to a carefully arranged meal. But behind that meal was a chain of workers. Someone had grown the grain. Someone had harvested it. Someone had transported it. Someone had stored it. Someone had milled it. Someone had baked the bread. And someone had carried it to the table. Even a simple loaf represented an astonishing amount of effort. The medieval castle was therefore a place where labor was constantly being transformed into comfort. A warm room. A clean shirt. A cooked meal. A well-fed horse. A repaired roof. A polished piece of armor. None of these appeared by magic. They appeared because someone had spent hours making them possible. And then there were the people whose job was to keep the Lord's household organized. The steward was particularly important. In a large estate, the steward might oversee a complicated network of workers and resources. He needed to know what was available. He needed to know what was missing. He needed to understand rents and obligations. He might supervise purchases. He might deal with tenants. He might organize supplies. He might settle disputes. He might report to the Lord. In other words, he had one of those jobs where everyone becomes irritated with you whenever something goes wrong. If there was not enough grain, the steward heard about it. If a shipment was late, the steward heard about it. If a servant disappeared, perhaps the steward heard about it. If the Lord suddenly decided to host an unexpected guest, the steward definitely heard about it. Because of course the Lord could invite 12 people to dinner without checking whether the kitchen had enough food. That would have been far too considerate. The steward was therefore a bridge between the Lord's wishes and the practical world. And practical reality had a habit of resisting noble wishes. The Lord might want fresh fish. The steward had to find it. The Lord might want new horses. The steward had to pay for them. The Lord might want repairs done. The steward had to locate craftsmen. This is one reason medieval castles were filled with specialized workers. A large household might have smiths, carpenters, masons, tailors, shoemakers, brewers, cooks, bakers, and other skilled people. Some might live within the castle. Others might come from nearby towns or villages. The blacksmith, for example, was an especially useful person to have nearby. Iron was essential. Horses needed shoes. Tools needed repair. Weapons needed maintenance. Locks and hinges needed making. Nails were needed everywhere. A castle without a competent smith would eventually become a place where many things stopped working. And medieval things had a remarkable talent for needing repair. A blacksmith's workshop was therefore a noisy place. The hammer struck the anvil. Metal glowed in the forge. Bellows pushed air into the fire. Sparks rose. The smith shaped hot iron with repeated blows. This was skilled work. It required strength. It required experience. And it required knowing when the metal had reached the right temperature. There was no digital thermometer quietly informing you that the iron was ready. You looked at it. You judged it. You learned. And if you made a mistake, the object had to be corrected or started again. Meanwhile, the carpenter had his own collection of problems. Wood was everywhere. Doors, tables, chairs, roof structures, carts, barrels, crates, ladders, tools. A castle contained a remarkable amount of timber. And timber wears out. So carpenters were constantly repairing things. A broken stool was not automatically replaced. It was repaired. A loose board was fixed. A damaged cartwheel was reconstructed. A door was reinforced. A beam was inspected. This was a world built around maintenance. And maintenance is rarely remembered. Historians love construction. We admire castles. We admire cathedrals. We admire walls. But the people who kept those buildings functioning year after year are much less famous. A medieval castle could survive for centuries partly because generation after generation of ordinary people kept fixing it. Not because medieval builders had somehow created a building that never needed attention. It absolutely did. Stone cracked. Wood rotted. Roofs leaked. Walls weathered. Floors became uneven. Doors broke. Windows needed repair. And winter was not impressed by anyone's architectural ambitions. So after breakfast, some workers might be sent to inspect the roof. Others might work in the courtyard. Others might be sent outside the walls. The castle was a constant project. There was always something unfinished. There was always something needing attention. Even the Great Hall needed cleaning. The Great Hall was often one of the most important spaces in a castle. It was where meals could be eaten, where people gathered, where guests were received, where ceremonies occurred, where household members spent time. And it had to be maintained. Floors could be covered with rushes or other materials, depending on place and period. These coverings helped make cold stone more comfortable. But they also collected dirt, food scraps, dust, animal matter, bits of straw, whatever happened to fall from someone's clothing. So cleaning was necessary. Rushes might be replaced. Floors might be swept. Tables might be scrubbed. Benches might be cleaned. And the whole process would begin again. This gives us another glimpse of the ordinary medieval day. There is nothing particularly romantic about sweeping a hall. Yet someone had to do it. and the hall would not have looked impressive if nobody had. Meanwhile, the noble family might be engaged in activities that were more recognizable as aristocratic. Reading, where they were literate. Listening to books being read aloud. Praying. Receiving visitors. Discussing estate business. Hunting. Riding. Practicing with weapons. Embroidery and textile work were common activities among elite women, although the old stereotype that medieval women did nothing but embroidery is obviously too simple. Noble women could manage households, correspond with officials, oversee estates, arrange marriages, receive guests, supervise servants, manage finances, and sometimes govern territories in the absence of their husbands. Medieval aristocratic women were not simply decorative figures standing beside a throne. Some held considerable authority. And authority created its own paperwork. A noblewoman might need to send letters. She might need to approve expenses. She might receive reports. She might deal with disputes. She might oversee servants and household production. So even inside the castle, there was administration. There was always administration. The medieval world loved paperwork. Or at least medieval institutions did. Every landholding arrangement, payment, agreement, inheritance, and legal claim could potentially become a document. And documents mattered because memories could be disputed. If two people claimed the same field, it was useful to have written evidence. If a tenant owed a certain rent, records helped establish what was expected. If a nobleman granted land to a monastery, a charter could preserve the agreement. Parchment was expensive. But property disputes were also expensive. So people wrote things down. A clerk might spend hours bent over a desk, carefully forming letters with a quill. The writing could be beautiful. But it was also work. His hand would become tired. The ink had to be prepared. The quill had to be cut properly. The parchment had to be positioned. And mistakes could be inconvenient. There was no simple keyboard shortcut. You could not press delete. You had to scrape away the mistake or work around it. So the written word had physical weight. Every letter had been produced by someone's hand. And every document represented time. Perhaps this is why medieval documents can feel strangely intimate. You are looking at the work of someone who sat at a table hundreds of years ago. Someone who dipped a pen into ink. Someone who leaned closer to the parchment. Someone who probably had absolutely no idea that people would still be reading his handwriting centuries later. Outside, the day continues. Perhaps a group of men are practicing with weapons. Not because war is happening today, but because it might happen tomorrow. A castle was, after all, a military institution. Men needed to know how to use weapons. Horses needed training. Equipment needed maintenance. Armor needed inspection. Bows needed strings. Crossbows needed their components maintained. Spears needed shafts. Swords needed sharpening. And weapons that were not being used still needed storage. A knight's armor could be expensive. It was also uncomfortable. Medieval armor varied enormously by period and place, but later medieval plate armor could be carefully fitted and surprisingly mobile. It was not the enormous, clumsy metal shell that modern cartoons sometimes suggest. But it was still hot. It was still heavy. And wearing it for hours required effort. So nobody casually wore full armor while doing household chores. You would look rather ridiculous trying to sweep the kitchen in a helmet. Training might take place in the courtyard. A knight could practice riding. He could practice with weapons. He might train with other men. Horses could be exercised. And younger members of the household might learn practical skills. A medieval noble child was not simply spending childhood playing with miniature castles. Education could begin early. Boys might be trained in riding, hunting, weapons, manners, religion, and household responsibilities. Girls might learn household management, religious education, textile skills, languages, music, and other accomplishments depending on their circumstances. Some children were sent away to other households. Some remained close to their parents. Some were fostered or educated elsewhere. And noble childhood could be strangely formal. Children were expected to learn how to behave around adults. They were part of the social machinery. Even play could have a purpose. Games taught coordination. Hunting taught riding. Courtly behavior taught status. And somewhere underneath all of this was the simple fact that children were still children. They became tired. They argued. They became bored. They wanted things. They probably complained. Medieval childhood was not an endless procession of solemn little people discussing dynastic politics. Although, occasionally, dynastic politics was exactly what adults wanted them to discuss. And then there was religion. The rhythm of the medieval day was strongly influenced by Christian religious practice in much of medieval Europe. Prayers marked parts of the day. A chapel or church might be located within or near the castle. A chaplain could serve the household. Services might be held. People could pray privately. Religious objects were present throughout daily life. Crosses, books, candles, relics in some wealthy settings. For many people, religion was not a separate activity performed only on special occasions. It was woven into ordinary life. Before meals, after waking, before sleep, during illness, during travel, during childbirth, during uncertainty. The medieval castle could therefore feel both practical and spiritual. A cook could spend the morning preparing stew. A clerk could spend the afternoon writing a legal record. A priest could spend part of the day reading prayers. A guard could spend hours on the wall. And all of them lived inside the same world of bells, seasons, rituals, and obligations. The day moved forward. Eventually, the midday meal arrived. For workers, food might be eaten where convenient. For the noble household, meals could be more formal. The great hall became active. Benches filled. Food arrived. Bread was distributed. Drink was poured. Servants moved between tables. And somewhere nearby, someone was trying very hard not to spill anything important. Because serving a noble household was its own skill. You needed to know who received what. You needed to move around other people. You needed to carry hot food. and you needed to avoid becoming the person responsible for dropping the Lord's dinner onto the floor. That would be a memorable career decision. After the meal, the work resumed. There was always more work. And as the afternoon stretched toward evening, the castle continued its quiet cycle. The blacksmith returned to his forge. The carpenter continued shaping wood. The servants carried water. The clerk continued writing. The guards continued watching. The noble family might receive visitors. Perhaps a messenger arrived from another estate. Perhaps a neighboring lord came to discuss business. Perhaps a priest stopped by. Perhaps nothing unusual happened at all. And that last possibility is worth emphasizing. Nothing unusual happened. For most people, most days, that was the normal condition. History books often focus on the exceptional. Wars, marriages, deaths, rebellions, coronations, betrayals. But the people living through those events spent much more time doing ordinary things. Eating bread, mending clothing, walking through courtyards, cleaning rooms, feeding animals, talking, waiting, working, sleeping, and waiting again. The medieval castle was not a permanent theater of dramatic history. It was a workplace. And like any workplace, there were probably days when absolutely nothing interesting happened. Which, for the people living there, was probably quite pleasant. As afternoon light begins to fade, the shadows inside the castle grow longer. The workers finish what they can. Tools are put away. Animals are fed. The kitchens become busy again. Another meal is being prepared. And the castle begins its slow transition toward evening. The same walls that looked gray and severe in the morning now glow faintly in the last light. A servant closes a wooden shutter. A guard takes his place. A horse stamps quietly in the stable. The kitchen fire burns brighter. And once again, the castle prepares for night. Tomorrow, someone will wake before everyone else. Someone will light the fire. Someone will fetch the water. Someone will open the gates. Someone will begin cooking. And someone will complain about the cold. Because some things, fortunately, appear to be timeless. By now, the castle has settled into its rhythm. Morning has passed. The midday meal is finished. The afternoon is beginning to fade. And if we were standing quietly in one of the castle's courtyards, we might notice something important. Almost nobody is standing still. Someone is carrying something. Someone is repairing something. Someone is talking to someone else. Someone is leading an animal somewhere. Someone is opening a door. Someone is closing a door. Someone is looking for something that was apparently placed somewhere very sensible yesterday and has now vanished completely. In other words, it looks remarkably like any workplace. The difference is that this workplace has thick stone walls, armed guards, horses, a chapel, and a lord who may occasionally decide that an entire afternoon should be rearranged because he has suddenly remembered that he wants to go hunting. The people who made this world function were numerous. And they occupied very different positions. At the top was the lord. Or lady, if the estate was under female authority. Then came the household officers. Below them were servants, craftsmen, guards, laborers, and many others. But medieval society was not a neat staircase. It was more like a very complicated ladder leaning against another ladder. People could have different responsibilities. A servant could be highly trusted. A person with a modest title could possess considerable authority. A skilled craftsman could earn more than an unskilled worker. A household official could become politically important. And a noble family could lose nearly everything through debt, war, inheritance problems, or simply making a series of unfortunate decisions. Because medieval wealth was not always as secure as a castle wall makes it appear. Let's start with one of the most familiar figures: the knight. We tend to imagine the medieval knight as a man permanently mounted on a horse, wearing shining armor, looking toward the horizon with an expression suggesting that he has recently remembered an important quest. Most knights, however, spent a great deal of time doing much less cinematic things. A knight might oversee land. He might manage tenants. He might train younger men. He might attend court. He might supervise defenses. He might negotiate. He might hunt. He might pray. And he might spend considerable time maintaining equipment. Weapons did not maintain themselves. Armor did not polish itself. Horses did not groom themselves. So even a wealthy warrior existed inside a network of workers. A squire could assist him. Grooms cared for his horses. Smiths repaired metal. Leatherworkers maintained saddles and straps. Tailors handled clothing. The knight's identity depended on all of these people. Without them, the magnificent armored figure becomes considerably less magnificent. Imagine a knight preparing to ride. He needs his horse, his saddle, his bridle, his clothing, his weapons, perhaps his armor. Each piece has to be checked. The horse must be calm. The saddle must fit. The reins must be secure. The sword belt must be attached properly. If armor is being worn, it must be fitted. And someone must help. Armor could be difficult to put on alone. Depending on the type and period, pieces were fastened with straps, buckles, and other fittings. A well-equipped knight might have several layers of clothing beneath the armor. And once everything was in place, he was ready. Ready for what? Perhaps nothing. He might simply ride around the estate. He might practice. He might accompany his lord. He might go hunting. Or he might sit in a hall and discuss land. The sword was a symbol of status. But a medieval nobleman did not spend every afternoon waving it around. Fortunately, that would make dinner rather complicated. For many aristocrats, hunting was an important part of life. It was recreation. But it was also a demonstration of status. Hunting large game required land. It required horses. It required trained dogs. It required equipment. And it required time. A poor farmer could not casually decide to spend the afternoon chasing deer through a royal forest. Hunting rights were often restricted. Certain animals and forests were associated with royal or noble privilege. So hunting was not simply about obtaining meat. It was about power. The right to hunt could itself demonstrate social position. A nobleman riding through the forest with servants and dogs was displaying the fact that he had the leisure and resources to do so. Meanwhile, peasants were busy producing food, which was one of the more obvious contradictions of aristocratic life. The people with the most food did not necessarily produce it. The people who produced it often had the least control over it. The castle therefore depended upon the surrounding countryside. A noble estate could include villages, mills, ovens, forests, fisheries, fields, meadows, and pasture. And each of these required workers. The miller operated the mill. The baker produced bread. The brewer made ale. The shepherd watched sheep. The herdsman managed cattle. The swineherd managed pigs. The reeve might supervise agricultural work. The carter transported goods. The laborers worked the fields. All of them were connected. If one part failed, another part felt the consequences. The miller is a good example. Grain had to be ground into flour. That sounds simple until you imagine doing it without electricity. A watermill or windmill could provide mechanical power, but the mill still needed maintenance. The machinery had to work. The stones had to be maintained. The grain had to arrive. The flour had to leave. The miller had responsibilities and, in many places, fees or obligations. The mill itself could become a valuable part of an estate. It represented technology, income, and control. The same was true of ovens and breweries. Food production was not merely domestic. It was economic. The castle's household needed supplies. The surrounding estate produced them. And the lord often exercised authority over how those resources were used. Now, inside the castle, there was another group of people whose work was easy to overlook. The laundresses. Their work could be physically exhausting. Water was heavy. Clothing was heavy. Wet clothing was even heavier. Imagine carrying a large bundle of soaked wool without a cart. There is nothing glamorous about it. The laundry workers might heat water, scrub garments, rinse them, beat dirt from fabric, and hang clothing to dry. They might use soap made from fats and alkaline substances. They might work outdoors when the weather allowed. In winter, the work became even more unpleasant. Cold water. Cold air. Cold fingers. And a castle wall offering absolutely no sympathy. Yet clean clothing mattered. Linen could be changed and washed more frequently than outer garments. For wealthy people, personal cleanliness could be maintained in ways that were sometimes more sophisticated than modern stereotypes suggest. Medieval people were not uniformly filthy. They had bathing traditions. They washed hands and faces. They changed linen. They used herbs and perfumes. They cared about appearance. But cleanliness required labor. And that labor was often invisible. The same was true of chamber pots. Toilet arrangements varied greatly depending on the castle and period. Some castles had latrines built into walls with chutes or openings leading outside. Others used portable containers. Waste had to be removed. Someone had to deal with it. This is perhaps where the romantic image of medieval castle life becomes slightly less romantic. Stone towers are beautiful. Waste management is not. But both existed in the same building. A castle was a place where noble poetry and unpleasant plumbing could coexist comfortably. And now we can drift into another part of the household. The kitchen. By late afternoon, the kitchen is preparing the evening meal. This might involve several workers. A head cook, assistant cooks, kitchen servants, people preparing bread, people cutting vegetables, people carrying fuel, people washing utensils, people turning spits. The cook had to think ahead. Meals could take time. If meat was being roasted, the fire had to be prepared. If bread was being baked, the oven needed to be heated. If pottage was being made, ingredients had to be gathered. The kitchen was therefore a place of planning. Food could not simply be summoned. And storage mattered. Salted meat, dried fish, cheese, grain, legumes, onions, garlic, herbs, fruits when available. The exact diet depended heavily on region, wealth, season, and religious rules. Christian fasting regulations could affect what people ate on particular days. Fish could become especially important during periods when meat was restricted. A wealthy household might have access to fresh fish if it controlled a fish pond, river rights, or had sufficient resources to obtain it. A poorer household might rely more heavily on grains and legumes. So the medieval dinner table could tell you quite a lot about social position. The Lord's table might display abundance. The worker's meal might be simpler. But both were part of the same system. And then there was bread. Bread deserves its own quiet moment because it was so important. For many people, bread was the foundation of the diet. It could be made from wheat, rye, barley, oats, or mixtures depending on region and circumstances. White wheat bread was generally associated with higher status because refined wheat flour was more expensive. Coarser breads were common among ordinary people. And medieval bread was not necessarily the perfectly uniform loaf we picture today. It could vary greatly. Shape, color, texture, ingredients. Everything depended on what grain was available. A castle kitchen might produce different breads for different people, which meant even something as simple as a loaf could reinforce hierarchy. The Lord received one kind, the servants another, the poorest workers another. Everyone was eating bread, but not quite the same bread. Hierarchy appeared everywhere. At the table, in clothing, in sleeping arrangements, in access to rooms, in food, in work, even in the way people addressed one another. A castle was not an egalitarian community. It was intensely structured. And yet people still formed friendships. They argued. They fell in love. They gossiped. They disliked certain colleagues. They developed loyalties. They knew who was kind. They knew who was difficult. They knew which servant was trustworthy. They knew which official was unpleasant. Human nature did not become simpler merely because the buildings were older. In fact, One of the most interesting aspects of castle life is how ordinary people must have experienced the same emotional world we recognize today. A worker could be proud of doing a job well. A servant could resent an unfair master. A young person could develop a crush. A soldier could be nervous about an upcoming campaign. A noblewoman could become frustrated with her husband. A lord could become angry because his plans were interrupted. Someone could feel lonely. Someone could feel comfortable. Someone could be bored. And someone could simply be hungry. The castle was full of people. And wherever there are many people living together, there will be gossip. We should not underestimate gossip. In a medieval household, information was power. Who was visiting? Who had received a letter? Who was getting married? Who had fallen out with whom? Which neighboring lord was angry? Which servant was leaving? Which nobleman had spent too much money? People noticed things. And servants often had access to conversations that nobles assumed were private. After all, the servant bringing the wine was physically present in the room. The servant preparing the bed knew who had slept there. The messenger knew where letters were going. The cook knew what food was being prepared. The laundress knew what clothing was being worn. The household therefore possessed its own information network. And it probably operated efficiently. Medieval castles may have lacked newspapers. They did not lack rumors. Rumors traveled beautifully. Sometimes faster than official letters. And now we can drift toward the evening. The great hall becomes warmer. Candles are lit. The smell of cooked food spreads through the building. The servants move more quickly. The noble household prepares for dinner. This could be the most social part of the day. Meals were not simply about eating. They could be occasions for conversation. Music might be performed. Stories might be told. Visitors might be entertained. A noble household could employ musicians, depending on its wealth. Minstrels could perform songs or recitations. Poetry could be heard. Religious texts might be read. Stories of heroes could be told. And occasionally someone probably talked for far too long. That, too, is timeless. Entertainment could include games. Dice were known. Chess was known. Tables, an ancestor of backgammon, was known. Other games existed. People did not spend every evening discussing theology. They wanted amusement. And this gives us another useful correction to the modern image of medieval life. The Middle Ages were not simply an endless sequence of misery. Life could be difficult. Disease was dangerous. Child mortality was high. War could be devastating. Food shortages occurred. But people also laughed. They played. They celebrated. They drank. They sang. They danced. They flirted. They told stories. They enjoyed good weather. They appreciated good food. They enjoyed being with friends. Human beings have always been remarkably determined to find pleasure wherever possible. Even in a stone castle with no indoor plumbing. Especially then, perhaps. The evening could also involve prayer. For a religious household, the chapel remained important. A chaplain might say prayers. Household members could attend services. Candles burned before religious images. The chapel was quieter than the hall. The walls might carry painted decorations. Books could be kept there. A noble family might donate money, land, or objects to religious institutions. Religion was tied not only to personal belief but also to social identity. A lord could demonstrate piety through donations. A noblewoman could establish or support religious foundations. A family might arrange prayers for deceased relatives. Death was not an abstract subject. People lived with it. They remembered ancestors. They worried about illness. They prayed for salvation. And yet, after the prayers, ordinary life continued. Someone still had to clean the kitchen. Someone still had to feed the horses. Someone still had to lock the gate. This is the strange balance of medieval life. The sacred and the mundane sat beside each other. A priest could bless a noble family in the chapel. 10 minutes later, someone could be carrying a bucket through the courtyard. There was no contradiction. Both were necessary. As night deepens, the castle becomes quieter. The servants complete their final tasks. Doors are checked. Fires are reduced. Animals are settled. The kitchen is cleaned. Food is stored. The last candles burn. The guards continue their watch. And the noble family retreats to its private rooms. The castle's population is gradually divided into smaller spaces. The great hall empties. The corridors become dark. The courtyard falls silent. Only a few people remain awake. A guard on the wall. A servant tending a fire. Perhaps a priest reading. Perhaps a person unable to sleep. Perhaps someone simply waiting for the night to pass. And beyond the walls, the surrounding village is also becoming quiet. The fields are dark. The roads are empty. The animals settle. The wind moves through the trees. The castle stands above everything. Huge. Cold. Impressive. And strangely ordinary. Because underneath all that stone is the same thing we have everywhere. People trying to get through another day. The knight needs his horse. The cook needs firewood. The steward needs accurate accounts. The servant needs sleep. The lord needs his dinner. The priest needs candles. The blacksmith needs iron. The carpenter needs dry timber. The farmer needs rain at the right time. And everyone needs tomorrow to be slightly more manageable than today. Of course, tomorrow will bring its own problems. The roof may leak. A horse may become sick. A shipment may be late. The Lord may decide to travel. A guest may arrive unexpectedly. A servant may quit. A quarrel may begin. Someone may break a valuable cup. And somewhere, inevitably, somebody will lose the keys. But that is tomorrow's problem. For tonight, the castle is quiet. The fires are low. The halls are empty. The horses are resting. The guards are watching. And the people who spent the day working are finally asleep. The walls hold the darkness. The wind moves softly over the battlements. And for a few hours, nothing needs to be repaired. Nothing needs to be counted. Nothing needs to be carried. Nothing needs to be cooked. The medieval castle, for once, can simply exist. And tomorrow, naturally, everyone will have to do it all again. And now, after all those footsteps, fires, meals, arguments, repairs, prayers, horses, ledgers, baskets, tools, and endless little responsibilities, the castle is finally becoming quiet. The great hall is empty. The benches sit against the walls. The tables have been cleared. The last wooden cups have been collected. A few crumbs remain where dinner was served, and somewhere beneath the table, perhaps, a stubborn dog is quietly investigating the possibilities. The kitchen fire has been reduced to glowing embers. The cooks have finished their work. The pots have been cleaned. The knives have been put away. The bread for tomorrow is waiting. And tomorrow will come whether anyone feels prepared for it or not. A servant closes a wooden door. Another carries the final bucket of water. The stable is warm with the quiet breathing of horses. Their bodies shift occasionally against the straw. A hoof taps softly against the floor. Then stillness. Outside, the guards continue their watch. They stand along the walls beneath a dark sky. There may be clouds. There may be stars. Perhaps the moon is bright enough to illuminate the fields. Perhaps the night is almost completely black. The guard looks outward. The countryside is quiet. There is no army. No messenger. No suspicious torchlight. Nothing. And that is exactly what he wants. He does not need to become famous tonight. He does not need to save the kingdom. He simply needs to notice if something changes. So he watches. And waits. And waits a little longer. This is one of the most important things to understand about medieval castle life. Most of it was waiting. Waiting for food to cook. Waiting for a shipment to arrive. Waiting for a letter. Waiting for harvest. Waiting for rain. Waiting for a visitor. Waiting for a wound to heal. Waiting for winter to end. Waiting for spring. Waiting for the Lord to finish speaking. Waiting for the next shift. Waiting for morning. The medieval world moved slowly by our standards. But it was not motionless. It was simply moving according to different rhythms. The seasons mattered. The daylight mattered. The church bells mattered. The harvest mattered. The weather mattered. The health of animals mattered. And the ordinary people who kept everything moving mattered most of all. Because the castle was never really just a building. It was a machine made from people. Stone walls were only the outer shell. Inside were hundreds of small tasks. And each task connected to another. The baker needed flour. The miller needed grain. The farmer needed a working plow. The blacksmith needed iron. The horse needed feed. The rider needed the horse. The kitchen needed fuel. The servants needed water. The Lord needed all of them. And everyone, in turn, depended on the countryside beyond the walls. That is why the medieval castle could never truly separate itself from ordinary life. Even the most powerful king depended on people he would never remember meeting. The man who grew the grain. The woman who washed the linen. The boy who carried firewood. The craftsman who repaired a hinge. The worker who cleaned the stable. The person who baked the bread. The person who swept the floor. These people rarely appear in heroic paintings. They rarely have statues. Their names are often missing from chronicles. But without them, the castle would stop functioning almost immediately. The grand banquet would disappear. The warm fire would disappear. The clean clothing would disappear. The horses would become neglected. The stores would become disorganized. The accounts would become confused. The castle would slowly begin to fail. So perhaps the real story of a medieval castle is not the story of the king. It is the story of everyone. The noble family. The knight. The cook. The guard. The priest. The steward. The blacksmith. The carpenter. The laundress. The farmer. The stable worker. The child carrying a basket. The old servant who knows exactly which door sticks in damp weather. Everyone had a place. Everyone had something to do. And almost everyone was tired. There is something comforting about that. Not because medieval life was easy. It certainly wasn't. But because the ordinary rhythm is strangely familiar. Wake up. Work. Eat. Work again. Talk to people. Solve small problems. Deal with unexpected problems. Finish what you can. Then go to sleep. And do it again tomorrow. We sometimes imagine the past as a world completely alien to us. But when you remove the armor and castles and strange clothing, people were still people. They worried about money. They worried about food. They worried about family. They worried about weather. They worried about illness. They worried about whether someone had said something insulting. They worried about whether the roof would survive the winter. They worried about their children. They worried about tomorrow. They also enjoyed things. A good meal. A warm fire. A sunny afternoon. A good horse. A successful harvest. A song. A story. A wedding. A festival. A quiet conversation. A moment when nobody was asking them to carry anything. And perhaps that last one was especially precious. Because there was always something to carry. The castle was a world of physical labor. Water. Wood. Grain. Food. Clothing. Tools. Stone. Animals. Everything had to be moved by human hands, animal power, wind, or water. The modern world has hidden much of this labor from us. Turn a tap. Water appears. Turn a switch. Light appears. Open a refrigerator. Food appears. Press a button. A machine begins working. In the medieval castle, nearly every convenience had a person standing somewhere behind it. And perhaps that is why the castle's silence at night feels so different. When the workers stop, the building itself seems to disappear. There is no humming machinery. No electric light. No distant traffic. No screens glowing in dark rooms. There is only wind, fire, footsteps, animals, and occasionally the sound of someone moving through a corridor. The stone walls absorb much of it. The castle becomes enormous and quiet. Perhaps a candle burns in the chapel. Perhaps a single window remains lit. A noblewoman may be reading. A clerk may still be finishing a document. A guard may be looking toward the horizon. But most people are sleeping. The servants in their shared quarters. The workers in small rooms. The noble family in more comfortable chambers. The horses in the stable. The dogs curled beside the warmth. And somewhere beneath all of it, the foundations rest in the earth. The castle has survived another day. Tomorrow, it will begin again. The fire will be lit. The gates will open. The animals will be fed. The kitchen will become busy. The steward will examine his accounts. The blacksmith will return to his forge. The carpenter will find another broken object. The laundry will begin. The guards will take their positions. The Lord will wake. And someone will inevitably discover that yesterday's carefully organized plans have somehow become today's problem. Because of course they have. That is the nature of castles. They look permanent. But they require constant maintenance. They look powerful. But they depend on countless ordinary people. They look romantic. But someone still has to clean the latrine. They look peaceful from a distance. But inside, there is always something happening. Not necessarily something dramatic. Just something necessary. And perhaps that is the best way to remember medieval castle life. Not as an endless story of kings and battles. Not as a fantasy world filled with knights. But as a long, quiet procession of ordinary days. Days filled with work. Days filled with repetition. Days where the most important event might have been a successful harvest. A repaired wheel. A healthy horse. A warm meal. A letter arriving safely. A roof that did not leak. Small victories. Quiet victories. The sort of victories that rarely make it into history books, but which make life possible. And so, as our imaginary castle settles deeper into the night, we can slowly leave it behind. The walls are dark now. The fields beyond them are covered in shadow. The roads are empty. The fires have become small red points of light. The guards remain awake. Everyone else is sleeping. Tomorrow will bring another day of medieval routine. Another day of carrying, cooking, cleaning, writing, repairing, praying, writing, watching, waiting, eating, and eventually sleeping again. But for now, nothing needs to be done. The castle can rest. The servants can rest. The horses can rest. Even the Lord, for a few hours, can stop being Lord. And if the roof leaks tonight, someone can worry about it tomorrow. For now, let the castle become quiet. Let the candles disappear one by one. Let the final footsteps fade along the stone corridor. Let the fire settle into its ashes. And let the old walls stand beneath the stars. 1,000 years ago, someone might have stood here listening to exactly the same night sounds. A guard. A servant. A monk. A child. A tired worker. Someone who had spent the entire day doing ordinary things. Someone who had no idea that, centuries later, we would still wonder what their life was like. Perhaps they wondered about the future too. Perhaps they looked at the stars and imagined what the world would become. Perhaps they simply wanted to sleep. And honestly, after a full day of medieval castle work, that seems entirely reasonable. So let us leave them there. Sleeping beneath stone roofs. Wrapped in wool. With the faint warmth of dying fires nearby. Outside, the wind moves gently across the battlements. The countryside rests. The castle rests. And for tonight, there are no more errands. No more accounts. No more repairs. No more royal demands. No more horses to saddle. No more bread to bake. No more floors to sweep. Just darkness. Quiet. And sleep. Good night.